Hello, friends and subscribers to the AP Educators YouTube channel. Derek Cometa here, co-host of the Coordinated Podcast. Hey, this conversation with Trevor Packer, it's a great one. It's one that many educators will enjoy. In this rare one-on-one, Trevor, who is the head of the Advanced Placement Program, he speaks with Carly Suge, AP Coordinator, school counselor, and co-host of the podcast. They talk about many things, including digital testing, goals for 2025, and the future, including the future for AP coordinators and the potential for flexible testing windows, the future for AP teachers, including integrating AI and project-based learning, and the future for AP students, including some words of advice for success on the day of the exam. So without further delay, here is the audio track from the podcast. Thanks again for joining us. Enjoy the conversation.
Coordinated, episode 267, a conversation with Trevor Packer. Greetings, AP coordinators. Carly Suge here, school counselor and AP coordinator at Costa Mesa High School in sunny Southern California. Thanks for joining us. It's Monday, March 17th, 2025, and we just passed a big milestone in our school year. Definitely a big one for us, AP coordinators. We polished up and completed our orders for AP exams. Checkmark, done. Next up, getting ready to host AP exams for our students. But before we do that, let's take a deep breath together and check in with a special guest. Today, in our Coordinated Podcast studio is Trevor Packer, head of the Advanced Placement Program for College Board. So, you know what that means. No time to waste. Let's get to it. It's time to get coordinated. Whew. I need to take my own advice and take a deep breath myself. I can honestly say I never expected to have the opportunity to chat with Trevor Packer, and on a podcast, nonetheless. No pressure. Trevor, on behalf of all AP coordinators and all our faithful podcast listeners, thank you for making the time to be with us.
Oh, Carly, thanks for the opportunity. I am so happy to be here. This is the first time for me. I've never actually been interviewed by an AP coordinator before. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I'm just so happy to be here.
Well, I'm honored to be the one that gets to interview you. So if it's okay, let's start with a little bit of background. So, Trevor, prior to joining College Board, you worked in academia as a researcher, author, and teacher. Always good to have a fellow educator on the show. Welcome. And of course, you have led the AP program since, I had to look this one up, since 2003, over 20 years.
Well, and before this current role, my work was actually focused on AP coordinators. I started at the College Board in 1999, and my first job was to work on developing the annual AP Coordinators Manual and the AP Program Information Guide. And at that time, everything was in sort of paper. Schools would order their exams by faxing in order forms, and they would pay their bill by filling out this triplicate form that to my eye seemed like more complicated than tax tables. It was really sort of nightmarish. So my initial work was with AP coordinators. I loved that work so much. I found the commitment coordinators make to serving such a broad array of students with different needs in different subject areas just incredibly inspiring and really challenging. So I one of the first things I did was put together a team of AP coordinators. We built the first AP coordinator workshops back in the day. So I love this work, and it's been a long time since I've been as closely involved in it as some of my colleagues are. But I just have so much respect for what AP coordinators do, and I'm thrilled to be here for this conversation.
Well, thank you. And during that time, AP has both expanded and redesigned. Lots of stuff has happened. Now, more recently, last summer, in fact, some big decisions were made regarding the direction of testing in AP, mostly around an accelerated plan into digital testing for most AP subjects. Now, some of us were able to hear about this decision live at the AP annual conference last summer, and others read about it through emails or on web pages. But since you're here, would you be able to tell us, in your own words, a little about the thought process that went into this transition into digital testing?
Yeah, sure. The original plan was to do this gradually over the next 5 years to gradually eliminate paper testing options and only provide digital testing options for several reasons. The main driver in my mind is how painful it is each summer when boxes break open during the shipping process and exams get lost. And every summer with paper exams, a number of exams never make it back to us. Either they are lost in transit or somehow else. And there's this terrible moment where we need to go out to schools in August and let them know no materials ever emerged. Like we have no score to provide your students. And so that is my least favorite moment in the year every year of working on AP is that those notifications. Because for students who have worked in some cases in a world language program, for example, for years to get to the point of proficiency measured by an AP Italian exam, to then not have an exam score after all that work, or to need to retest months after class has ended, like it's so terrible. So an elimination of paper really helps with elimination of lost or missing exams. So we were moving for that reason, also because of the flexibility that we would be able to provide schools in setting test dates later in May if they prefer, earlier in the year, in January, for example, if we didn't have paper exams. Because the challenge with paper exams is we have to build in an operational process for collecting all that material back, scanning in the students' responses, getting all that done so that the exams can be scored. But if you can take away those paper transit times, the time it takes for paper to flow around the world on airplanes, in trucks, and instead just have that instantly come back electronically, we can give schools the option of later testing dates in May if they prefer, and we can provide a January option for schools that would want to test in January. So that's very appealing to us. So there were reasons to do this gradually. We were very much moving in this direction. So why did we do this not gradually? Why do we need to do this all for this year? Last spring, we saw an unprecedented degree of exam theft that for whatever reason, and last summer, we saw a number of subjects where exams were taken by adults who had access to them somehow and offered for sale through social media, through the internet, through signs outside of testing centers in particular locations. And so as a result, what we needed to do was use psychometric processes to identify students that had gained access to the content in advance. So we canceled an exponentially larger number of students' exams for cheating last May, than we ever have before, because we could see psychometrically that these students had acquired the exam content in advance and were responding to the questions in particular ways that revealed that they had access to the exam questions in advance. Even so, it was a small fraction of the 6 million exams that were taken with prior knowledge of the exam content. What our analysis revealed, though, was that now that cat is out of the bag, now that this is it took students by surprise this year. Like, most students did not know about this possibility, but we determined that this would grow in scale this year to the degree that we anticipated that if we did not remove the option of paper tests with all the risk of them being stolen and sold to students, what would happen was that at least one version of an AP exam would be posted on social media to a degree that we would have no ability to determine which students saw it and which students did not see it, and would then need to cancel all of the AP exams in AP English, all of the AP Biology exams. In a worst case scenario, this could happen to every single version of an AP exam could be posted on social media and disclosed. That's where we were. That's very much what we determined the risk would be if we persisted with paper testing this year. So except in a few subjects, as you all know, as coordinators, a few subjects where that risk is much, much lower, in that it's very hard to fake your way through French proficiency at the last minute. It's very difficult to fake your way through music theory proficiency at the 11th hour. So those we can afford to move more gradually towards digital testing. But every other subject where if you knew the questions in advance, you could fake your way to a great score, we needed to shift them to digital testing this year. So that is a sort of long explanation of why we moved from a gradual plan to a rapid
Mhm.
plan. And I just want to recognize and acknowledge that that's tough. That's challenging. Like, we don't like rapid change. We all feel a little bit burned out on rapid change following the years of the pandemic. The last thing we wanted was another rapid change this year. But a rapid change felt much better to us than the really significant danger of needing to cancel an entire subject's exam that would deny
Mhm.
many, many students who would otherwise deserve that college credit the opportunity to receive it.
Right, absolutely. And as an AP coordinator who works with students, that would be absolutely devastating for students, like you mentioned, Trevor, who have worked so hard over years to get to that point, to take that exam. So I appreciate that explanation because, like you said, big change is difficult and we're all working on it. But it is helpful to hear that at the end of the day, it's about the students and their success overall. So thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. And hey, a change this big does come with a few challenges, but I'm ready. AP coordinators are getting ready across the world, and we've been preparing since the start of school. So we're good. I know we're good. AP coordinators, Trevor, we do know how to get things done.
It's so true. Change is hard, and the number of things that many coordinators are juggling professionally is significant. And so I hate us being a source of one more need to change, need to adapt. So I just want to express a really sort of profound gratitude for the work that coordinators are doing to understand the change in the way these tests will be now administered. We think that once the change is made, as we've seen in schools that have already used digital testing optionally over the past few years, a really high level of satisfaction for coordinators, the ability to no longer have to pack the number of boxes that had to be packed and manage the amount of sensitive materials that had to be managed. So there are some real upsides, but those upsides come after the cost of transition this year. And so thank you in advance for the work that will still be done between now and end of May to make this transition for in your schools.
Thank you for acknowledging that. Like you said, Trevor, a lot of us are AP coordinators, but we're not just AP coordinators. There's a lot of us who are counselors and librarians and assistant principals and lots of other different people who are supporting these students. So we appreciate that, and that's very nice to hear. So that's a quick look back. And now, as we are recording this, we are deep into the current school year, and a lot is going on. I'm sure a lot is going on for you as well. So, what are your goals for AP in 2025?
Well, the top goal we've already spoken about, which is our first priority simply must be to deliver effectively the online test administration that schools are counting on, the students are planning on, the teachers are planning on. So as my team and I talk about how to focus our efforts, we have deliberately moved other priorities off of our roadmap for this year to ensure that there is adequate time and resourcing for the support of the transition to digital testing. So that's our very top priority, number one. Beyond that, we are of course looking ahead to this fall and to how we can start providing more opportunities for students that don't see themselves as attracted to the existing AP courses to think about other opportunities, to think about other possibilities for themselves within AP. So we are working on designing and developing some additional AP courses that align with subjects that are often taught in the career and technical education space that haven't traditionally been seen as part of what a student does for college credit in high school. But in this day and age, many colleges are indeed offering college level courses in these spaces. So we're exploring new AP courses in fields like anatomy and physiology, business, cybersecurity, and so on, that can provide students that may be more interested in professions in those spaces with the opportunity to be part of an AP classroom with a great AP teacher who's received great professional learning experiences with an AP exam that is valid and fair for college credit and placement. So we don't have anything to announce about that quite yet, but we anticipate making an announcement later this year, sometime in the summer, about the next group of AP courses that we will be making available to schools. So no new AP courses for this coming fall, like we would have needed to have announced that already, but this summer, we will announce most likely some new AP courses for the following academic year, the 26-27 academic year.
I love that personally, Trevor, as a counselor. It's amazing to think that more students will have more opportunities within AP to be taking classes that are of interest to them. So thank you for sharing that. Wow, there is so much going on in AP this year, so much going on at schools as well. It's a busy time, it's an exciting time. I feel like I've been saying this a lot lately, but this school year has been unlike any other. So, we just talked a little bit about past decisions and directions, and we just talked about the present, what's happening this year in 2025. Now, let's talk about the future. Looking forward, what are you most excited about?
So I'd like to think about the future in terms of different groups of people that work on AP. So as I think about AP coordinators, I'm most excited about providing AP coordinators with more flexibility for how they structure their AP exam experience in their schools. And what I mean by that is very much what I described earlier in this conversation, which is that with the shift to digital testing, we will be able to provide schools with more flexibility in when they want to schedule their AP exams. So many schools would prefer later dates in the academic year. The first 2 weeks of May are great for about half of the schools that close in May. And that's why we have to have them in those dates in early May, because if half the schools in the country are closing in May and we only have one standard AP exam date, you have to have that date before half the schools in the country close for summer. But with digital exams, we anticipate being able to have schools that would like to give exams in the last 2 weeks of May be able to do so then, because we can still get those student responses back in time to score the exams in June as we need to in order to have the scores ready for college credit by July 1. So flexibility for coordinators. Also, many coordinators would prefer to have a January exam administration for courses that are offered on the block schedule that end midway through the academic year. So I guess the plug I would put for these ideas are, if they're priorities for the coordinated podcast community, like, please pay attention to the participation survey that you receive as part of this fall's registration for AP. As you're setting up APRO this fall, as you're setting up AP Classroom for this fall, please pay attention to the questions we'll be asking to try to gauge how quickly we should prioritize providing enough exam versions to let schools use later test dates in May and earlier test dates in January, and for which subjects coordinators would want that flexibility. And also, if coordinators don't want that flexibility, we need to hear that too.
Mm.
So I think about flexibility for coordinators, and if there are other ways we can be more flexible and make AP coordinators' lives easier, we want to hear that. So that's how I think about the future for the way we support and interact with AP coordinators. As I think about AP teachers, I think about just the burden on teachers to score and provide feedback on written work for students. And so we are very interested in utilizing AI to provide a high-quality teaching assistant for AP teachers that we would design to score certain written tasks for teachers that they assign their students. So the teachers can then spend their limited time with students, coaching them and helping them improve, rather than all of the sort of sometimes drudgery, frankly, of reading endless amounts of student writing. So there's some real inequities here now. We hear of wealthier school districts that can afford to provide their AP teachers with a human teaching assistant that does all this teacher's grading for them. And that gives the teacher a lot of flexibility to provide more coaching services and to tailor their feedback for their students. But that's inequitable right now. That depends on the resourcing of the school. So we are eager to explore and develop, with the use of AI, a digital teaching assistant that AP teachers would have for the scoring of their work. Our mission remains sort of entirely focused on access and opportunity. We want all students who are interested and motivated to challenge themselves, all of those students, to have an opportunity to take an AP course. We want access for all such students. So what that means is that we need a situation where teachers have the capacity to offer more than one section. Because the norm right now in every AP subject, the norm is one section of AP, and then all the other students get an honor section or a normal section of that subject. So if we're ever going to really make access what it should be, and serve a much greater variety of students that are interested in this type of experience, we need to support, like, logistically, pragmatically, a situation in schools where teachers can offer more than one section without being drowned by the workload of a college level course in high school. So that's we're very interested in supporting access and reducing teacher strain by using AI for providing digital teaching assistant. We're also interested from a teacher perspective in supporting the transition to project-based learning in a number of subjects where we do this already in AP Seminar, AP Computer Science Principles, but we will be moving in the direction of having in more AP subjects like AP English, untimed writing that is part of the AP score. But what does that mean in this day and age? In this day and age where AI is ubiquitous, we need to design that unproctored writing task in a way that utilizes AI constructively and productively rather than allowing AI to replace student learning inauthentically. So we are working this winter and spring right now, in fact, to design AI-dependent writing tasks whereby students learn to use AI to deepen and improve their writing process rather than to replace the active writing and thinking. So we imagine that in the near future, we will have AI-based writing tasks in some of the AP courses, as well as continuing to have the proctored writing task so that we have the best of both worlds, students showing that they can write without the support of AI on their own, but students also using AI to deepen their research process, to interrogate the evidence that they're generating, and so on. So more to come on that. That I guess that leads sort of into a third area, like what is the future for students? Very much that. We will be embedding AI in the AP Computer Science course. AI will be embedded as a writing tool in a number of AP courses that require writing so that we can have unproctored writing, untimed writing be part of the course experience, not just a timed assessment at the end of the year. I love AP as is probably obvious. But what I don't love about AP is like I don't love the dependency on everything being timed at the end of the year. So we are very much in the motion, in moving towards in motion, this shift towards not having everything be about that end of year exam, but having more of the work be valued that is done during the academic year for college credit as well. But that involves managing the security of that, managing the authenticity of the work, particularly in an environment where AI is readily available. So Carly, let me ask you as well. So you've asked me like, what am I thinking about as I think about the future of AP? And many of the best things we've done here at the College Board in AP have been a direct response to feedback from teachers and from AP coordinators. So
Mhm.
I really want to know from you, like as someone who works at a school with AP students right now, can I just pivot this question back to you? I'm
Hmm.
really curious. What are you most excited about going forward, or what would be your top recommendations for the future of the AP program?
Wow. Well, thank you for asking. For me, when you were talking about AI and kind of teaching students how to use tools to better their understanding of subjects, I think that that is really fascinating and interesting in the education community to be able to support students in their learning. And so I love hearing that from you. But for me, as a counselor and an AP coordinator, it's always been and always will be about the students and their success and all the ways that AP plays a part in that. I'm a counselor, an SSD coordinator, an AP coordinator, lots of hats, but ultimately it's all about the students, how we encourage them, how we guide them, how we can help them through challenging times and all of the blooming technology that's going on in the world and how we can celebrate their success. And for me, a big part of that is AP and the opportunities provided by AP to connect with so many students at my school, besides those in my daily counseling role at my school. Trevor, I'm the ninth grade counselor this year. So next year, I'll be a 10th grader with them.
Mm.
But as the
Mhm.
AP coordinator, I get to work with all of the AP students at my school, and that's really a beneficial part for me is to be able to see those students kind of grow in their AP classes and their AP experience, and I personally really love that about the role. As an AP coordinator, I think we all do everything we can to make sure our AP students have the best possible testing experience. And it's so much pressure, but I love it. And I'm always excited by the challenge. And it's one I welcome because I believe my students deserve the best. So, Trevor, thanks for asking my thoughts. And thank you so much for the quick conversation today. Is there any final words you'd like to share with our coordinated podcast community?
This maybe goes without saying, but I recently attended a pilot of the digital testing, in Newark, New Jersey. Students from around the area, their parents brought them on a Saturday morning to a hotel conference room, and dozens of students just kind of practice taking an entire AP pre-calculus exam from start to finish online to sit to have that experience.
Mm.
And so it was fascinating to see how students adapt when they have no real prep for something. What was that experience like for them? And what I saw was we held this sort of discussion with them afterwards and asked them questions about their experience. And it was such a no-brainer for the students. I know that's not surprising to any of us as adults, but they are called digital natives for a reason. They adapted so rapidly and found it so easy to do. That as we asked them questions about things that might have been confusing to them, they're like, no, none of this is confusing. This is just we can figure this out. This is so. I think that really anything we can do to reassure students that the user interface has been piloted for multiple years. It's been used by millions of students who have taken PSAT tests and SAT tests there. Students will rapidly take to this. And I think that we can stay very calm about that. But I would say also anything we can do as we approach exam season every year to help students keep these exams in context as being not the end all and be all. The stakes of these can sometimes be seen as more high than they really are. I value the AP exam. I think many of us value it as an environment where the student is proctored and is able to think about an entire year of college level learning, or in the world languages, multiple years of college level learning. So I value that. And it is a valid indication of whether students should be placed ahead in college. But it's not more than that. Anything we can do to alleviate strain on students and help them see that it's okay to have a bad day. The stakes are not so high here. That the worst outcome of not doing well on an AP exam is simply taking that class again in college, which is a normal human thing to do and is not the end of the world, and may in fact be a really good thing for many students to have that experience again in college. So there's just there's so little at stake ultimately. And again, I don't want to diminish at all the efforts of students to do well on these exams and how rewarding it can be to receive a credit qualifying score on the exam. But also, the real power of AP comes from having a student that would ordinarily get 0 AP experiences and getting them into an experience where they take 1 AP course and get 1 score of 3 or better. That is where we see the biggest shift from a research perspective in that student's college trajectory. And after that, the benefits are much more incremental. So as much as we can keep students calm or reduce the pressure on students to pile up on the number of APs they're taking, unless they really want that experience, unless they really feel prepared and eager to challenge themselves and to learn from that experience, let's keep the stakes very low for students. And anything that the AP coordinator community can do to keep the stakes low, to help remind students that what was important is all the learning they've done during the year. They should show up, really use that AP exam as a chance to challenge themselves and to think about what is this? What type of skill is this question going to elicit? A few years back, one of the White House honored their National Teacher of the Year, and the National Teacher of the Year happened to be an AP chemistry teacher, and she was honored. It happened to be on the day that her students were taking the AP chemistry exam, was the day when she was supposed to show up at the White House for a ceremony in the Rose Garden. So she showed up at the White House as one would for her recognition, and she said, it was a little bit strange not being with my AP chemistry students on the day they're taking the AP chemistry exam. So when I had my final class with them yesterday, I just said to them, remember, what I've taught you here is not just a bunch of content. I've taught you how to be problem solvers. So approach the AP exam as don't be startled when you see things on the exam that seem unfamiliar to you. Oftentimes, the exam very deliberately will put on a stimulus that is not required in the course so that we can test whether the student can apply a skill. Because very important for college credit and placement are the skills students develop, not just their content knowledge. So when a question appears on an exam, if a student thinks, my teacher never taught me that, their first reaction should be to stay calm, because that might be exactly right. Questions are put on the exam to test students' skills in approaching something they haven't seen before. And whenever we put a question like that on the exam, we design it in a way so the student does not need to know anything about that content to perform the skill. So anytime a student is panicked by seeing something that they do not recognize in an AP exam, they should take a breath and think, hey, maybe that's intentional. What is the skill they're asking me to perform here? And then re-engage with that question. So just sort of when you asked like anything finally you'd want to say, that was, I think, maybe more than you were asking for, Carly, but just sort of like thoughts I have each year as we approach May and as we think about the student experience, as we think about the way pressure can become counterproductive. Those are sort of thoughts that I have each year at this time for what they're worth.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Trevor. You are speaking to your people here. We completely agree with you, and coming from the perspective of student success and support, I completely agree with the idea that students need to kind of take that deep breath, just like I needed to at the beginning of this podcast, and kind of put themselves in a place of, let's show what I've learned, and kind of use that as a catalyst to being successful. So thank you.
Thank you.
EP coordinators, thanks again for joining us. We'll be back again next week with an all new episode. We'll talk to you then. And for all our support of AP students, yep, our support. AP coordinators, we are truly good as gold.
And maybe I just don't know. I'll say it over and over and over again till I believe it's so. I'm good as gold.